Cloak, comrades, and dagger dogs. Show off your wiggle for the war cabinet. Go commando, because it's laundry day. And really, Nick, any room that we walk into becomes a situation room.
You've always been on the dramatic side, Omen. It's time to talk Tull to me.
Me?
What's the situation?
What's the situation? Welcome back to the podcast. I am Omen Thomas Sade.
And I am Nick McGill.
Together, we are that legion called the Feckless Momes.
And this, my mortarboards, is Talk Tull to Me.
A braggadocious blanket fort on the battlefield of Prog Rock, in which no quarter given Nick and Overwatch Omen will line up for inspection each and every generally enlisted track that reconnoitering rock bands Jethro Tull have ever used to form a perfectly impenetrable Roman tortoise. We will study the guerrilla bass tactics of David Goodyear, feast our ears on Florian Opal's flanking maneuvers, and who's that little drummer boy? Oh, it's Scott Hammond! And if we can booby-trap our bagpipes, acquire the access codes to our Accelerandi, and keep a fire in our harmonious holes, we may just gain the allyship of the coup de grace of the concertina, the shield wall of sky, the escalade with the killer bod, a man who commands a phalanx of flutes, Ian Anti-Aircraft Anderson. Pro-train anti-aircraft.
That's good. I'm glad you specified that. I like that. That's good. Yeah. He's not used to shoot down airplanes. He just doesn't like them.
He's just against them.
Not fond.
I actually figured out a way that we can make Ian Anderson our friend.
Go on.
Well, the enemy of your enemy is your friend.
Okay.
We are our own worst enemies.
Therefore,
if we make Ian Anderson our enemy, we will logically de facto make him our friend. You can't argue with that.
Philosophically, I think that works. Mm-hmm. I think.
Yeah.
In practice, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Yeah.
It's a thought experiment.
Yes, there you go. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Speaking of thought experiments, Nick, what is it that we will thoughtfully be experimenting with this day here on Talk Tull to Me?
I think we will experiment with talking a track of Jethro Tull.
What fun.
I know, how fortuitous it is. This is the first track in the section of Gerald, the Military Man. So we are on song number 6, Old School Song. We are halfway through. We are starting a new divergent path into Gerry's universes here. And yeah, we're starting fresh and actually not so fresh, actually. Once we get into it, we'll see how not so fresh.
Never so foul and fair a day I have not seen.
I have that not so fresh feeling when I listen to the song.
Mom, do you ever feel, not so fresh? Sure. That's why I douche.
So not so fresh, so not so clean. Let's have a listen. Nick McGill.
Omen Thomas Sade.
There we have the old school song.
That it was in fact the old school song.
The very oldest of school songs, I think.
I think it feels like it's pretty old. It sounds pretty old.
Yeah, and yet always new somehow. What do we have musically in this track, Nick?
We start with an homage to the old school song that is Thick as a Brick 1.
Yeah, very much so. We have that riff.
Ba, 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 na, na, na.
Takatum, takatatatum. The way we lead into that is really fun. It's like, I don't know how John O'Hara is achieving this, but he kind of makes the Hammond organ roar like a lion.
Yeah, it's a swell of some kind.
It's so cool.
Is it going up in actual key? Like, is he just working his way up the keyboard, or is it just like a volume swell?
Let's listen to it again. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard to figure that out. But I mean, the Hammond organ is magical, and can, if you know how to use it right, which he clearly does.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You can get some really awesome sounds out of it.
I do really get the sense that he is enjoying playing the Hammond. We heard in that little documentary on the making of this album that it was his new toy, his pride and joy.
Yeah.
And he was a good boy, so he got a Hammond organ to play with.
Christmas came early in his stocking.
Batteries were not included.
No.
Yeah.
A plug was, though, so it's fine.
Right. But it's great. Yeah, I don't know how he's making that sound. There's tons of settings on it. Or it could have been something that was done in post, but I suspect that it was a live effect.
I think so. I feel like even though it is pure magic to us, it feels like it's a fairly simple thing to do if you know what you're doing with the Hammond organ,
Yeah, twist the roar knob.
Yeah, right. I need a little bit more roar. Can you pick up the roar just a hair?
Please, somebody twist my roar knob. For the love of God. That roar knob isn't going to twist itself.
I can't open the door. Try the roar knob.
Ruh-roh. That theme that we have follows us pretty much all throughout the song.
Yeah.
Not exclusively to the exclusion of everything else, but it is one of the main themes that we keep coming back to.
Yeah, which is kind of rare in this album so far to get something so blatant in reference to Thick as a Brick One.
Yes.
And having it so regularly mixed into the sound.
That's something that really sticks out to me about this track.
Yeah.
Very much fitting with the military theme. This track is intensely regimented.
Yes.
Very structured. There's very little fantasy, Let's do a little ornamentation over here. It's pretty much, here's what it is. We're going to play it straight through.
Yeah. Even the parts like Florian, who's not backbone like we're normally accustomed to with a guitar. Right. He's more incidental and a comment here and a follow-up here. It's still very precise.
Yes. Even the sort of the things that you would think would be less precise. I love in the chorus, we fly our colors high. He goes, wow, wow. We fly our colors high. Bravo. He does that lovely little slide. He plays it the exact same way every single time.
Yeah. He's a very intricate and precise player, it seems. And I think, again, it's difficult to know how much of a hand he has in that and how much of a hand Steve Wilson has in that for that cleanliness. But from what it sounds like, from what it seems, there is definitely just a regimented stricture of his playing that makes it really, really delicate in a sense.
Yes, I agree. And we saw this a little bit in that documentary. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a strong preference coming from Ian for let's play it the way it should sound rather than fixing it in post.
Yes, yeah.
There are plenty of people who are like, whatever, we'll fix it in post. Yeah, we'll make it sound great. Just chuck it out there and we'll fix it later.
Right.
I suspect that Ian is like, no, let's make it sound how we want it to sound. And then if we have to, if there's no other alternative, Steve Wilson will fix it for us.
Right. Yeah. And Steven Wilson can do magic, I'm sure, with his post-editing and his production. But I think there's only so much you can do.
Yes.
In production.
Yeah. I mean, without losing the quality of it, I think, you can only manipulate the sounds that you have recorded.
Exactly.
Whenever I've worked with younger actors with microphones, there seems to be this misconception that the microphone is going to make your voice sound good. No. The microphone is going to make your voice sound louder.
Yes.
But it will only amplify what you're actually producing. So you still have to use good vocal technique. You still have to use projection.
Yeah.
The microphone will amplify it, but it won't turn you into a great orator.
Those amateurs.
Those amateurs. After we're well stuck into that John O'Hara on Hammond organ intro, we get the hard drums with flute coming in. And then when we get about 30 seconds in, just as we're getting into the first verse, Florian comes in with the guitar. Yep. As you said, very delicately, very precisely, very unobtrusively.
He's not our backbone here. He's not the base coating of icing. He's like the florets and the little liney designs on this cake.
He's the piping.
The piping, that's it. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Whereas John O'Hara he's the cream cheese filling.
Yes. Yeah, he's there. He makes the main body of the flavor.
Right.
Followed closely by Scott Hammond on the drums, I think. He's playing a very potent, very strong, very driving sound in here.
Yes.
Particularly, it helps because we reach a point where we go into a march sound.
Yes.
Keeping our military in mind. That's his show right there, is he keeps that march going.
Wrapped in the old school song.
They turn the drums up. It's pretty intense in the earphones.
Yeah.
It's not like, a subtle reference to a military march. It's like, no, here's the drums.
Yeah.
Ian is the sponge.
Yes, a delicate Genoese sponge.
Yes, but firm.
Firm.
Well baked.
Without a soggy bottom.
No soggy bottoms here.
Good crumb.
Excellent crumb. Perfect amount of proving.
Yes. Perfect cake?
This cake has been proved for 40 years and then baked for 10.
Why is it so bitter? Oh, we'll never know.
It's special yeast. Scottish yeast.
So we have the Hammond. It brings us in and everything. Ian starts to sing. His voice is filtered again. We've got that like bullhorn / radio announcer, like really tinny sound on his voice.
From playing fields to killing fields, just one small step of madness.
All the way until we get to that march. And when we get to that march, we have a doubling of voices here. I think it's just another Ian. Because we don't have Peggy here, my guess is that it's just Ian singing with Ian.
Are you referencing the gung and ho?
So be this gun or be this hole.
That's kind of a call and response. That's everybody, I think.
That sounds like the full band yelling.
Yeah, but I do think that we do have two voices on that chorus. It's not even Ian attempting to do the high and the low.
It's just a doubling up?
It might even just be a doubling up, yeah, but I feel like I hear a second one in there.
Wrapped in the old school song, we fly our colors high.
It's quite subtle.
Is there one in there, though? Do you hear it?
I think so.
I know. It's very hard to pinpoint.
If it's there, it's unlike what we've heard in the past, where it's really trying to make, here's this voice and here's a contrast with this voice, even though they're the same singer.
Yeah.
This almost seems like it's so subtle as if it's not trying to be hidden, but the sense that there are multiple copies that are exactly the same, that are just slightly tiny bit, a fraction of a second off from each other.
It's such a curious choice because in that very section, we do have those other voices that call and response. So it's strange to not have another voice in there. It feels like it would feed very organically into that, having those other voices. I'm not entirely sure why we have that per se.
I would venture a guess that it maybe is trying to conjure the feeling of uniformity, the sense that there is a group of people who are all exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like a soldiers.
I guess which is more effective if it's just Ian layered as opposed to the rest of the band.
Perhaps.
If we're going for that really, really like surgically identical.
Maybe it was a choice that was made in post-production.
Right, yeah.
They didn't want to go back in and re-record, so they just doubled it up. Who knows?
It is so subtle, it could very well be just Ian's, just a duplicate of his singing that in the forward and just kick it back, like just a hair of a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the instrumental at 146, 145-ish is extremely regimented. There are no cadenzas. There's no interpretation. There's no, people taking a big walk down baseline lane.
Yeah, right. There's no, and now David Pegg.
Right.
And now Clive Bunker. And now...
It's functioning as a machine.
Yeah, it's a very quick driving 3 minutes of a song.
It's really short.
Yeah.
You're going to hate this. So the time signature would appear to be in 4/4 all the way.
But it's not, right?
But it's not. There are, I believe, if I'm counting this correctly, there's a floating measure of 3 dropped in.
I knew it. I sensed it.
Yeah.
I sensed it when Alderaan got blown up, and I sensed it.
There was a disturbance in the force, yes.
There was a 3/4 in there, because every now and then, as soon as I got confident that I'm like, oh yeah, this is 4/4, I'm confident, and then it's like, wait a second.
Suddenly you'd be off. Yeah.
No.
It's so tricky because it's almost a hidden measure of 3 because the way that Ian has written that musical phrase, it feels steady, it feels straight.
Right, yeah.
But suddenly you're just off. And so I think what it is the bum ba dum ba dum ba da da dum. That intro which comes in and finishes off the
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3.
dum ba dum ba dum ba da da dum. Yeah, it's coming in early. It's coming in on what would be the 4 of that measure.
Okay, yeah.
It's fascinating. It's a really interesting choice. I mean, and I don't think it's just progginess for the sake of progginess.
No, I don't think Ian's ever been guilty of that.
He's been guilty of a lot of things.
A lot of things, but not just...
But not that.
Not peacocking the presentation of prog.
Not Stephen peacocking the prog.
No.
The prog flowers.
No, but I do really like that aspect because of that driving march.
Mm-hmm.
Because for most of it, we do get into that symmetrical, really comfortable 4/4.
Mm-hmm.
And then every now and then, you're like, oh, wait a second.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like he's so good at doing, we've seen it in the past, by the time you realize something happened, you're back in 4/4. So you're really off kilter the whole way.
Yeah, yeah.
But it also doesn't ruin the experience. It just adds to the complexity, and like your subconscious is like, oh, there's something going on here. This is nice.
For me, I think it fuels the tension that exists in the lyrics.
Okay.
Which we'll fully dive into here in a couple of minutes. But there's this notion of the expectations of the glory of war versus the realities of war.
Okay, sure.
That we have being hinted at or being, slowly built in. I think it is sort of the worm in the bud.
The bud is the 4/4 and the worm is that little splash of 3/4.
Yes, exactly.
Like it.
I just saw a quote about in the bud. O rose, thou art sick, the invisible worm that flies in the night, in the howling storm, has found out thy bed of crimson joy, and his dark secret, love, does thy life destroy.
I love that the worm flies in the night in this poem. The worm of the sky.
The worm of the sky worm. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's a sky worm, look out.
It's the sky worm.
Skyworm was actually the name of my hair metal band in the 80s.
Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it, yeah.
Skyworm! Thank you, Philadelphia! We are Skyworm!
Your one and only hit, Skyworm.
Skyworm, yeah. Listen, it pays the bill.
The one bill, which is...
Bill is our agent.
That's better than what I was going to say. That's good.
We toured with Thunder, if you'll recall.
The old Skyworm Thunder double billing? Yeah, no, I do remember that.
We'd switch up who would open for each other so that we'd each get a chance to seem like the headliner.
Right, and nobody knew the difference.
Nobody knew the difference.
Yeah. Technically, Skyworm was a supergroup. Yeah.
That's right. Nick
Omen.
The Skyworm has landed here in the middle half, the second of 3 halves of this podcast.
The center of this bud.
And we're the worm.
Skyworm. Yeah, so we have a bunch of stuff that we're going to get into a bit later on. Folky Phil sent us a copy of the tour program we might dive into.
Oh, he sure did.
We're going to talk cover art. We're going to talk reviews. We're going to talk the St. Cleve website. But for today, I think we're just going to wrap up what few notes we have on this album proper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what notes might those be, Nick?
So I have a quote I have a couple quotes from Ian, rather. So this is a rundown of Ian's summary of the album. The follow-up album presents 5 divergent hypothetical life stories for Gerald Bostock, including a greedy investment banker, a homosexual homeless man, a soldier in the Afghan War, specifically the Afghan War. Let's keep that in mind.
Specifically the Afghan Wars, yep.
A sanctimonious evangelist preacher, and a most ordinary man who, married and childless, runs a corner store. By the end of the album, however, all 5 possibilities seem to converge in a similar concluding moment of gloomy or pitiful solitude.
Oh,
yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, right. Sorry, everyone. So we get this really cool idea of the one Gerald, as young Gerald.
Yeah.
And then we branch off into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We branch off into 5, and those 5 kind of balloon out, but all land back. And it's this really depressing idea of no matter which one of these paths you take, you're still going to land here.
It's fascinating. It's kind of the age-old question of predeterminism versus free will.
Yeah.
And Ian, in typical fashion, seems to be playing both sides of the argument.
Yes. Professional fence sitter Ian Anderson.
God, if only I could pay someone to sit on my fence.
Hello, my name's Ian.
Here's my card.
I'll play the flute for free.
Come with the flute playing, stay for the fence sitting. Well, I mean, and in some ways, all of our fates do end the same.
Right, because we don't know what possibilities could have led elsewhere. So ultimately, we're all going to end where we end.
As insult comic and drag queen / clown Bianca Del Rio says, people would say, you have a lot of haters. How do you deal with them all? And she says, oh, well, the great thing is that anyone who talks badly about me, they're going to die. So it doesn't really matter to me. So anyone who hates me, they're going to die.
Matter of fact.
It's very, very healthy way to look at things.
Except she hires assassins very regularly.
Well, yeah, that's the bit that they don't tell you in
less healthy.
In drag school.
Another quote from Ian. I'm at pains to explain that at the time of the contest, his parents lied about his age and he was actually 9 years old when his poem won. Remember, the big front page of Thick as a Brick 1 was Gerald Bostock won this poem competition. And remember our pseudo Gerald Bostock who wrote in from Texas had some long story about that. I wonder if I must have saved that somewhere. We should revisit that absurd story.
But in the original, is he supposed to be 8?
He's supposed to be 10.
Oh, okay.
When he was disqualified, he was 10. It's basically because I have to make Gerald Bostock 50 years old, not 48, because I like round numbers.
Ooh.
But we now see Bostock as a defrocked evangelical priest, as a highly paid investment banker that everyone hates, as mental and physical casualty of the recent desert conflicts, as an ordinary man who plays with his toy train set and has a wife. And we also see him on the album cover as an XMP. It's exploring life's endless possibilities, which is interesting because we don't have the XMP in here, do we? That's one that we don't actually have in terms of the story that we're hearing.
It's interesting to hear Ian's gloss on it because as we get into the later half of the album, I think that there's other material that is not just those stories. We have a whole 22 Mulberry Walk is kind of a rehashing of some of those personalities. So it's not just cut and dry, here's the stories and then we're done with the album.
Right, yeah.
There's a lot of weaving in and out of the interpretation of these stories, even by Ian.
Yeah, right. There is that vague and indistinct through line of, don't forget, this is just an iteration of Gerald, and who knows how many there are that I'm not telling you about, kind of thing.
Exactly.
You know, there are these infinite fractures.
Yeah.
I'm not giving you the end all be all of the variety here.
Yes, exactly.
And then finally, one more final quote from Sir Ian Anderson. This is in terms of why the hell did he make this album? I wanted to make something that appealed to me on both musical and intellectual levels. I think there's some great stuff on there, and the band are brilliant. Some people think it's great. Some people will say, bloody hell, what is this old Pratt on about? But frankly, in someone else's immortal words, I don't give a damn.
There we go.
There it is.
Dear listeners, you're all going to die anyway, so I may as well make this album for myself.
Yeah, right. I don't care at this point. Ultimately, it doesn't matter because I'm producing art. He certainly reached a point at this time in his career where he can have much greater freedom. When's the last time he was asked to oh yeah, we got to put out like a radio friendly single?
Right.
Like what, Christmas song or something like that?
Behold the fields in which my f***s are grown, and see that it is barren.
Lo, it is barren and dusty.
And dusty. Nick, welcome back to the second half of the podcast. Here we are.
Here we are.
Nick, did you go to school?
Yes. Yes, I did.
And did you feel a sense of school pride?
You know, never. I never really did.
No.
Because I wasn't in sports.
No.
The greatest zeal comes from a sports team and being a participant of a sports team.
Yes. Or an associated position adjacent to the sports team, a cheerleader or a locker room.
Locker room buddy.
Locker room buddy? Isn't that? I don't know. My application was always rejected, so.
Oh, man.
I played the flute in the band
Yeah.
occasionally at the football games. That was fun.
Yeah, but it's not like it was make or break. You were playing for the school, like the team itself was.
Yeah, we were very ignorable.
Yeah.
So what is an old school song?
So old school has the connotation of being like very original, maybe possibly outdated.
Right.
The way it was done generations past, that it has potentially new ways have been created and evolved away from that.
The implication being that the old way is better. Sometimes.
If saying something is old school, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. If someone is referring to something as old school, yeah, maybe that it has that behind it. But I more see of it as that it needs to be retired. You know, if something is old school, we need to embrace the future and the present and not live in that past.
The other way of interpreting this is it's the old school song.
Exactly. Yeah.
When we were in school, we used to sing this song.
Yes. Yeah. And it's probably not so prevalent here in the States with our newfangled schools. But with these really old running schools, they probably had school songs and things like that.
Well, and I think we get a direct reference to what the old school song was.
From Pirates of Penzance?
From Pirates of Penzance.
See, I looked on the track listing of Pirates of Penzance and couldn't find anything that spoke to me in terms of what it could have been. Pirates of Penzance being a Gilbert and Sullivan, most famously
operetta.
The operetta, most famously known for the major song. I'm a very model of a major monkey general, something.
You got it exactly correctly.
Yeah, on the nose. Perfect. Yeah.
I actually think it is that song.
Oh, you think so? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, of course. Duh. Because we're talking about the military. Jesus. Yeah. Of course.
Because he's saying, I am a representation of the military, and isn't that great? And more to the point, it is a famous patter song. It's difficult to sing. It has all those syllables in it. I am the very model of a modern major general. I've information, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England, and I quote the fights historical from Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical. It's difficult to sing, so it'd be very fun to sing with your friends.
Yeah, right. While drinking a pint.
You know, who can do it the fastest?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's sort of one of those games.
Right. And you're most likely with a group of other like-minded kids who are planning to go into the military. You know, you're romanticizing this. You're planning your goals of, you don't start as a general. You know, you work your way up and oh, I'm going to end up as a general. I'm going to go as far as I can. I'm going to be a career man.
From playing fields to killing fields, just one small step of madness.
From playing fields to killing fields, just one small step of madness.
We've talked at length about the violence of football, the violence of other sports.
The rugger field. Yeah.
The rough boys on the rugger field, yep.
Yeah.
A lot of sports are actually derived from military exercises or are a stand-in for combat.
Right. Might as well be, yeah.
But they literally are. It's like, oh, well, we don't kill each other anymore, so we've developed this sport where we can feel like we're killing each other.
Yeah, right.
But I do think that there is a lot to be said for the sport to military pipeline.
Yeah, sure.
Not to say that that's inevitable, but in this case, Ian is drawing a clear connection.
Yeah.
Officer training uniform, boys together, shower together.
Officer training uniform, boys together, shower together.
Well, and, you know, even some of the functionality of sports. You have a uniform, you have equipment, you have to work as a unit, you have to shower together, you have to be, you know, you get comfortable with each other.
Right. The uniform is to deter individuality. You are part of a unit. You
Yes.
are all the
Yes,
same.
exactly.
You are all equal. If you do not participate, the rest of the unit suffers because of it. If they do not participate, you suffer because of it as a unit.
And then you have the hierarchical thing built into sports. You have the captain, you have the coach and all that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think what Ian is implying here is that some schools are preparing their kids to be in the military
Sure.
intentionally.
Sure. Yeah.
Rank and file can be just fine, but that's not what we're here for. So sign upon the dotted line, be commissioned, hell for leather.
Rank and file can be just fine, but that's not what we're here for. So sign upon the dotted line, be commissioned, hell for leather.
So we're probably going to get it wrong, some of the terminology.
Yeah.
But rank and file versus commissioned.
So rank and file would be
I think we would call that general enlisted.
right. I'm having a difficult time separating drafted versus enlisted. Drafted, you are the bottom of the barrel. You didn't want to be there. You've got the shittiest job. If you decide to enlist instead, you at least get a head up on the game. You know, that was back when we had the draft, you know, World War II.
Right. I don't think this is talking about a draft.
No. So what's that commissioned officer?
Yes. So a commissioned officer is starting, your entry point to the military is a little bit higher. You have a title. And the way that you do that is through a pre-military training program.
That's right. ROTC.
ROTC is what we had in the States.
Yeah.
It's the Reserve Officers Training Corps.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So you're training to be an officer.
Yeah.
You're training to go in well above your standard grunt.
I don't know if you had ROTC in your school, but it was a big presence in Mexico High School. A big presence. And even, I'm certainly not for encouraging high schoolers to go on a military career, but at the same time, I have to admit that that particular ROTC program was probably a really good thing in a lot of kids' lives because it did provide structure. It did provide training and critical thinking for kids who would otherwise not have gotten it because they weren't in the arts and they weren't in sports.
Right. Yeah. I didn't know ROTC was a thing until I got to Hofstra, so we didn't have it in weed sports. Shockingly enough.
Really?
But we were small enough. Well, Mexico's pretty small too, but the only equivalent I can think of is BOCES, you know, the trade school kind of thing that we had as well.
Right. So ROTC was sort of a vocational training for the military.
Yes. Right. Exactly.
And the deal was you put in a certain number of hours, you showed up to school in fatigues and uniform. It was pretty wild, you know, thinking back on it.
Yeah.
And, you know, you had to go through inspection and everything. And if you did a certain number of years, you could go into the military at that higher level,
right?
Higher level of pay, higher level of official rank. Thank you. It seems to me Ian is referencing some similar program. Now, I don't have any clue if those programs exist in Britain.
Oh, I would not be surprised. Even individual schools, military schools.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And probably, as with the difference between our schools, probably some schools had much more of a interface with that than others.
Yes, some, while not necessarily a military school per se, were known for, if you want to go into the military, if you want that leg up before you go into the military, this is the one to go to.
Yes.
Like the arts school in Rochester.
And there is a lot of, yes, exactly. And there is a lot of, the traditional pattern, at least in the States, is that military enrollment programs prey on or have a high rate of success, let's say, with populations that are impoverished.
Yes.
But that's not for the commissioned officers. That's for the rank and file.
Rank and file, right, which is just grunt, foot soldier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got no way out of your hometown unless it's the military.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's that or work in the mines.
Yeah.
Not hyperbole. I'm thinking like West Virginia. Yeah.
And guess what? The mines are closing.
Yeah. Oh, valid. Yeah.
So be commissioned hell for leather. Hell for leather means great speed. It seems to date back as far as the late 1880s, with Rudyard Kipling using it in a story.
Marked by determined recklessness or lack of restraint. Interesting.
It seems like it may have been started as Hellbent and then Hellbent for leather.
Okay. I've heard of Hellbent before.
Hellbent I've heard before. I think Hellbent for leather or Hell for leather is sort of like get on your horse.
Yeah.
Get on the saddle and ride.
The effect of riding a horse as fast as possible on saddle or crop.
Yes.
Okay. Hell for leather. So it's hell for the leather. You're wearing out the leather.
Oh, that could be it. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So, it's basically, hey, we all had a great time playing rugby. Let's all go to the war together and we'll all sign up together so we'll all be commissioned officers. What fun it'll be.
Yeah, drop everything. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Not like, maybe do I want to?
Yeah.
This is jumping in.
How we sang that old school song from Pirates of Penzance. Foemen bearing steel, we slapped our chest and raised our voices.
How we sang that old school song from Pirates of Penzance. Foemen bearing steel, we slapped our chests and raised our voices.
It's really funny that he's referencing the war song that they all used to get hyped up about war was a Gilbert and Sullivan song.
I know, right. Not even a song, but like out of an opera, no less.
Yeah.
That's so strange.
It is the most removed from warfare thing that you could possibly imagine.
I know. Foeman is, especially in the military force, an armed adversary. So they're saying the enemy is bearing steel, bayonet or gun or whatever, and we slapped our chests and raised our voices. We weren't afraid. We were there. We were representing our country.
Yeah.
We were showing our pride and our bravery.
I think we're still in the fantasy section.
Definitely feels like it, yeah.
It'll be so cool.
Right, yeah.
Talking about the period of time this is in the aftermath of the Afghanistan conflict, I remember when, leading up to that, when the attack on the World Trade Center had happened.
Right.
And in my small town, there was a lot of rhetoric around what we were going to do in retaliation.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a guy, this idiot kid in my class who'd probably never been outside our county, let alone the state, let alone the country.
Yeah.
I remember distinctly him saying, "Oh yeah, I might like to join the army. I'd love to kill me a towel head." And I was just like, my God, dude.
Yeah.
You have no conception of anything but what you've been fed.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the sense I get from here. It's like all these kids are hyped up on, yeah, we're going to go and...
They don't know the reality, yeah.
Exactly.
So the Afghan war, in terms particularly of the U.S. and when it really became kind of a big thing, on our radar at least, was in 2001 after the World Trade Center. I think that's when kind of other world troops really kind of dove in as well. Before that, it was a Soviet-Afghan war in 79 to 89. But for us, it was 2001. It was a military presence, it wasn't a war. It wasn't, it was a military something, whatever bullshit they made up so Bush could put troops there. And they were there until 4 years ago when Biden pulled them out. And of course, that was a big mistake. Apparently, he did the wrong thing. He did it incorrectly.
It's all very difficult. And Afghanistan has had a long history of foreign occupation, going all the way back to the 1800s with Britain.
Yeah, right.
John Watson of Sherlock and Watson had served as a doctor
That's
in
right.
the Afghanistan war with the British armies. So,
Friend of the pod, John Watson. Yeah.
friend of the pod, Dr. John Watson. So, anyway, no mad poets we, or painters twee, but young men with a yearning to flex our might for all that's right when faced with moral choices.
No man poets we or painters twee, but young men with the yearning to flex our mind for all it's right when faced with moral choices.
We weren't those artsy-fartsy kids.
Yeah.
We were ready to go make a difference in the world.
Yeah, it's a dichotomy. It's
Yeah.
we aren't those weaklings.
Right.
We are the ones willing to go to war.
Yes.
Straightforward, very simple. And I think you're right to put this stanza. I think this is still a part of that fantasy of that we're going to be brave soldiers. We're going to be heroes. We're going to be the ones who save the day and save the world, not those wussies that
Right.
paint art.
It's just like when I play Call of Duty.
Yeah, right.
And what's great about this whole album is that Ian is able to not only, make these antitheses happen within a single song, but this whole song is operating in an antithetical relationship to the next song. And we've totally skipped the actual war itself. We have a before and we have an after.
Yeah.
It's very Shakespearean. It's sort of like, all the brutality happens off stage and you just see the effect of it.
Yeah.
You see the servant coming in and being like, my lord, your wife is dead.
My lord, we didn't have the budget. Your wife had died it was an awful battle. It was hideous. It was disgusting.
Yeah, blood everywhere.
Horses, so many horses.
Would have been very expensive to produce.
Someone brought an elephant.
Oh, they sure did.
You just have to believe me, though.
My liege, that was a little cringe.
My liege, it were a shitstorm.
Great use of the word twee. That's a very British word for any Americans who are confused about this word. Not general American confusion. We can't do anything about that.
No.
Twee is sort of underpowered, unserious, not getting to the root of anything.
A feat, kind of.
Yes.
Yeah. Derogatory, I would certainly say.
Oh, very much,
Yeah.
yes. Children's programming on television is often described as twee.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Saccharine, almost.
Yes, great. Yeah.
Sentimental. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get to the first of our choruses. Wrapped in the old school song, we fly our colors high, with a U in it.
Because Britain.
Because Britain. Bravo, the old school song. Harsh reality, by and by.
Wrapped in the old school song, we fly our colors high. Bravo, the old school song, harsh reality by and by.
So, I mean, he's even telling us that this is all the fantasy leading up to the war.
Yeah, so wrapped in the old school song, we have this tradition. We've been fed this thing to excite us, to kind of paste over the reality. It's really just this fantasy of what it's going to be. So we have this song that gets us into this mood. We fly these colors with pride. We fly the flag of Britain in the air. Bravo, old school song. Yeah, great. Harsh reality by and by. That's kind of a brushing under the rug of like, yeah, I mean, we'll have to deal with this eventually, but I'm 18. I'm full of piss and vinegar. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I've heard that people come back from war traumatized. R.I.P. to them. I'm different.
I won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were we talking recently about? Oh, we were talking on the Sort of Young Person's Guide with Ian and Ed about the practice of pressing people into service.
Yes. Yeah. Was that Maddie Groves?
Yeah.
I think from Fairport.
Yeah. There was a song. Maybe it's that one. There's a whole genre of songs about getting pressed into service.
Pre-Tull, for sure. Like it's a folk song tradition. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the recurring themes in that is they told me that it was going to be like this. They told me that I was going to be, that the ladies were going to love the uniform. They told me that I would always have my pockets full of gold. Well, and it turns out that was a lie.
Yeah. I have scurvy. I lost an arm.
Right.
And my wife won't look at me.
Right. And I'm broke.
Yes. Right.
This is all of the hey, it's going to be great. You're going to love it.
This is the build-up, the preamble to that, yeah.
And in another set of arguments for why one should throw oneself into the mix of war, Dad delivered us from the Hun, and we reflect his selfless deeds upon this desert plain of conflict, where special forces choppers need.
Dad delivered us from the Hun, and we reflect his selfless deeds. On this desert plain of conflict, where special forces choppers need.
A lot to break down in there. The Hun, of course, was not Attila.
Was that the Germans?
Yes.
How interesting. They call them the Huns. In World War I, they were the Hessians.
I think the Hessians were a particular group, a particular division.
I think they were, actually, I just read this. It wasn't World War I. It was the Revolutionary War.
Yes, in the Revolutionary War, we hired Hessian
troops. Yeah, they were not necessarily mercenary. I guess they were kind of mercenaries, actually.
They were mercenaries,
yeah.
In fact, the legend of the Headless Horseman.
He's the Hessian, yeah.
He's the Hessian, yes.
Yeah.
The Hessianless horse. The horseless Hessian.
Oh, yeah, he just lost his horse. There's nothing scary.
Yeah.
He has his head. He just lost his horse.
Yeah. Oh my God, he was headless. Did you hear?
The horseless headman.
Right. So, there's this sense of, well, my dad went to war, so I should go to war. It reminds me of in Forrest Gump, where his friend has had someone killed in action in every single American conflict going back generations.
Yeah.
And so he has to go to get killed in Vietnam.
Right. That's Lieutenant Dan, I think, isn't
That's
it?
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
I felt real lucky he was my lieutenant. He was from a long, great military tradition. Somebody in his family had fought and died in every single American war.
It's my daddy did it, so I have to do it. But it's also, I think it's really indicative of that generation of they don't talk about their feelings. They don't talk about their experiences. They don't say how shitty it was.
So it must have been good.
I'm going to go have the same experience and also come back a hero.
Yeah. And interesting where special forces choppers need. This idea going back to what you said of, though it wasn't a war, it was a special operation. And so everyone is quite special who's there.
Yes. Yeah.
And the heavy use of the Air Force, a fly boy coming to collect you, lift you up, and then protect you.
Fly boy coming to collect you, lift you up, and then protect you.
Don't worry, no matter how badly we get into trouble, the choppers will come in.
Yeah. And being whisked out on a chopper is also romanticized, like,
Sure.
the big brave rescue. You go in behind enemy lines. Yeah. You're not in these lines of troops who just get mowed down as fodder. Oh, you're doing something clandestine and you're sneaking in there and you're going to be a real hero for it.
Yeah.
And then you get rescued by the chopper.
What's left of you?
It's this big fantasy.
I'm reminded of when you were talking about, we went into Afghanistan, the American army went into Afghanistan, and then there were other nations who joined in. Remember, there was that famous George Bush speech, if you're not with us, you're against us. There was that kind of sense of like, well, we're going in cowboy style.
Yeah.
Be this gung or be this hoe. May glorious battle resurrect you.
So be this gun or be this hoe, may glorious battle resurrect you.
From the Chinese gongge, taken to mean work together.
Yeah.
And adopted as a slogan by the U.S. Marines.
Cultural appropriation, what we do best.
That's just language, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is kamikaze. We picked up kamikaze from World War II as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's a sense of working together, but it has come to mean this sense of enthusiasm.
Yes. Yeah. Kind of a blind zeal almost.
He's real gung-ho.
Yeah.
To go to the mall. Get a smoothie.
He needs to return his shoes. Yeah.
Yeah. So be this gung or be this hoe. So interesting. But may glorious battle resurrect you. I don't know if this is what was intended, but there was in Afghanistan, in the U.S. Army, there was this
bunch of hoes.
Then they rejected my application.
Not enough gung.
Not enough gung. Everyone wants to be a hoe. Nobody wants to be a gung anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But there was this thing that happened where, I don't know why, I guess it was they didn't have enough soldiers or they just kept getting killed. But there was this, there was the rotating door of how many times you served.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You would go and serve, and they'd be like, oh, it's just a one tour. It's going to be a one tour thing. And then you'd go and you'd do your tour, and you'd go on leave, and they'd say, well, actually, just kidding. We've upped it to 2 tours. Everybody's going to do 2 tours now. Then at the end of your second tour, they'd say, well, actually, we're doing 3 tours now.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's this sense of, yeah, that's going to happen. You'll do multiple tours, but you'll feel so reinvigorated to get back to it. You just won't be able to wait for it.
Yeah, I think it's 2 sides. I think it could be 2 things. Whether you could be this gung or this ho, whether you can embody this idea of being gung-ho about it, or whether it's the result of gung or ho. It's not you being gung-ho. There are these kind of like these abstract ideas of being the cause of something, of being the cause, presumably the death of the soldiers who are then resurrected.
Yeah, I think it's all part of this whole song is about being swept up in this excitement of, oh my gosh, we're going to go and really do something.
Yeah.
We're going to go create meaning in our lives.
Yes, right. It's difficult not to look at May Glorious Battle Resurrect You in 2 views as well. Either A, the dying in honor, like Valkyrie, Valhalla
yes,
kind
exactly.
of thing, but also you're dead unless you go into the military and then you're resurrected as this new creature, this new entity who now has life.
Yeah.
You haven't lived until you've been in the military.
Baptism by fire.
Yeah.
A rebirth of the new version of you, yeah.
Yeah, it took a long time for my hair to grow back after I became a Catholic.
The baptism by fire, yeah. That's crazy. Your Holiness would seem to be out of holy water. But that's all right. We can use that gasoline.
We got gasoline, kerosene, and lighter fluid. Put them all in there.
Take your pick.
Now get that incense over here. Get a candle.
I feel the spirit. Oh, that's an explosion of volatile flames.
I feel the spark of Jesus. No, that's an actual spark. Oh, sorry.
That's a real spark.
Your child blown into the atmosphere.
At least we know he was a Christian.
He flew up to heaven, Donnie. Don't you worry.
Oh, my God. Finally, we have a repeat of the chorus wrapped in the old school song, We Fly Our Colors High, bravo. The old school song, Harsh Reality, by and by. Maybe in the next very song.
By and almost now.
Well, Nick, next week, very little mystery as to what we're going to be listening to. It's the second half of Jared the Soldier.
Jared?
Of Gerald the Military Man.
Jared, he went to Jared, the military, the subway guy. Yes. Yeah, Gerald the Soldier. We are on track number 7 off of the entire album. It is Wootton Bassett Town, which we do not know the reference, but there is a specific reference there that we'll dive into.
Actually, we do know the reference.
Do we know the reference there?
Yeah, we know it from Silent Singing.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, it's not like a random statey hearing that reference will not know what it's referring to, is what I'm saying.
Let's get Wootton Bassett Town.
Yes. Until next week, I am wrapped in the old school song, I am Nick McGill.
I put the ho back in gung-ho. I'm Omen Thomas Sade.
We are the presenters of Harsh Reality, the Feckless Momes.
And you are always showering together with Talk Tull to Me. Wait, hold on. Let me see if I can do it.
The General Song, I think it's called. It's a General Song.
Generally, it's a song. I am the very model of a modern major general. I've information, vegetable, animal, and a mineral. I know the kings of England, and I quote the Vice Historical from Marathon to Waterloo in Attercora Gattergal. I'm very well acquainted too with matters mathematical. I understand equations both the simple and quadratical. About binomial theorem, I am teeming with a lot of news, with many cheerful facts about the square and the hypotenuse. And then the chorus goes, with many cheerful facts about the square and the hypotenuse. I'm very good at integral and differential calculus. I know the scientific names of beings, animalculus. In short, in matters vegetable, animal, and mineral, I am the very model of a major general.
In matters vegetable, animal, and mineral, is the very model of a modern major general.
I know a mythic history, King Arthur's and Sir Cararax. I answer hard at Costrix, and I've plenty taste for paradox. I quote in elegiacs and the quince of Heliobasalax. In conics, I can flow peculiarities cabalax. This is really, I've never read the lyrics. It's much harder than I imagined.
This last, oh my God, it's not the last, but it gets worse and worse, and reading it blind, not friendly.
Terrible.
Not user-friendly.
Yeah, we should put it in the real recording.
Yeah, I might. We'll see. I might put this in.
Cheerio, everyone.
Ciao. Auf Wiedersehen.